I haven't done a Q&A for ages, and I've been wanting to get to one. And every time I think about fielding questions, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And I completely, utterly forget. But I remembered now. 4 platforms we got going. We got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I've used all of them to ask you to ask me anything. And I totally had to skim through. I like to kind of keep it off the cuff, and I don't like to peek, because I think it's a lot more fun when I just kind of scroll through and I'm reading as I go. But I got too curious and I peeked. So I know the gist of a lot of what was asked, and I know a lot more questions have come in since the last time I looked. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Instagram. Anthony Scott asks, what is one thing that you'd like to bring back from the 90s? I think finding comfort in things that we would find boring today. So the mundane, things that would be considered mundane today are moments that we would just we would cherish, because we would cherish those times together. Now everybody needs a buffer, and they need so much stimulation to do things. They're constantly on their phone, they're doing this, they're doing that. But there were times where on a Friday night or a Saturday night, or even during the summertime when, there was no school, we would drive, and we didn't even have to speak, but just that act of being together, suddenly you weren't bored anymore. Like, you could be doing the same thing at home, just sat there listening to music, you're bored off your ass. However, you get everybody together, we're still listening to the same song, but together instead of alone, suddenly it's an entirely different feeling. Suddenly that moment means something. And those are the moments that I tend to remember the most, are the moments when we would pack into a friend's car. We would just drive around at night in the summertime with the windows down. And while we're listening to Morrissey, we're listening to the Smiths, we're listening to The Cure, we're listening to Susie, we're listening to the Psychedelic Furs, we're listening to just so many melancholy things, and just driving. And I feel like activities like that are so lost on people today, because everybody is in such need of instant gratification, whereas they're trying to vlog the moment, or they're scrolling through Instagram. And I'm guilty of this myself. I'll be sat here with friends and I'll be scrolling through Instagram, finding funny videos and just sending them to people that are sat right next to me or across from me. It was that feeling of doing the same thing you would do if you were alone, but it was 10 times better. And you were suddenly so fulfilled and gratified because you had 10 other people doing that same thing with you, just doing nothing. We were busy doing nothing, and it was the best time ever. And I feel like it's that simplicity that I miss. Moving on. Let's see. So Cyber Angel Luna, she had asked the same question that I noticed a lot of people did when I skimmed through, and wanted to know like my 3 favorite bands. So some people said 3, some people said 5, some people said all-time favorite. So when I was younger, when I was first getting involved in the goth scene, I could tell you first I had my top favorite band, like my number 1. When you were younger and you first got started, you were like Bauhaus forever, Sisters of Mercy forever, and you would be one of those people that would have like that, your ride or die, that one band that you would live for. And as you got older, as you discovered new music, it changed. Suddenly you have your 3 favorites, then you have your 5 favorites. And when you make it to, I guess, this stage of the game, those change, because there's so much music out there now and you're listening to it all. And then sometimes you're just reverting back to your old tried and trues, and that music that still touches you, that used to way back when. And depending upon when you ask me, every few months I'm going to give you a different answer. So if you ask me what my favorite 5 bands now are, they're going to be different from a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. It's going to change. But if you were to ask me right now, it would have to go with what's in rotation. So I would say that would be Skinny Puppy is probably always going to be part of that. So I'm going to say Skinny Puppy first. And I'm going to say Ante, Rosetta Stone, Wingtips, The Shroud, Minuet Machine, The Wake, Children on Stun. You know what, now that I think of it, I feel like I've been on another one of my 90s kicks, because I'm like, oh no, we have Plastic Noir, Bat Nouveau, Wingtips, I think I already said, Actors. So it's always more of a group that I tend to listen to, and you can tell how I'm feeling based upon like what music I'm listening to. But I had to turn off the AC in here because the AC messes with the mic so bad. Okay. But yeah, I have a tendency when it comes to music, like for example, Skinny Puppy. I love Skinny Puppy. Tinnerman, that song is fast as hell. However, as much as I love it, I tend to prefer the slower songs. Let's say if I'm listening to Skinny Puppy, you got Cult, Candle, I like Warlock, Smothered Hope. I like the slower ones. They just feel more visceral, like you just, grr, it grabs you. I'm gonna stop right there. I need to close my Spotify. Okay. I feel like I didn't see that one. Ala on Instagram asked me, how old are you? I am 43. No, I'm 42, but I will be 43 this year. And let's see. Sebastian Saldivia had asked me, how do you see the future of the goth culture? So right now, the way that it's going, I think it's really very much up in the air, because it can really go either way. And I'm hoping that, you know, we had that big tank, really tanked like in 2005. And I'm hoping that was really a one-off, and we learned from our experiences, and we learned the signs of what to look for and what not to allow, in order to kind of mitigate that whole thing from ever happening again. But it's not entirely impossible. So going on the fact that we know better now, I think if people continue to create as they are, you have people that are contributing, you have people doing publications. You know, we have Procession Magazine, Auxiliary Magazine. We have new bands coming out left, right, and center. I can't even keep up, which is the best problem to probably have. We have people showing up to events, which is amazing, because it's important that you support the bands. And what's also really good is places like Bandcamp, because they keep you up to date with new music, and music is so much more affordable now that it's more accessible to everyone else. And you get to listen to music from so many different mediums, by Spotify, Bandcamp, by YouTube, before you buy it, which is a lot more than we had back in the day. So with things progressing in that way, I think that the future in the goth subculture, I think it's positive. I think it's moving in a really positive direction. I think we just need to kind of stay on course. And how am I going to put this? We need to make sure that we guard that gate, but gently. You don't want to push people away. Don't push people away, but correct them. And don't be afraid to correct people, because there have been a lot of instances where people are afraid to correct people now when they're wrong, because they're concerned about being called an elitist or a gatekeeper, and you know, people get all up in arms. So what? Some people just don't like hearing the truth, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't hear it. And it's important that you make sure that you educate people. Always lead by way of education. Never do it by way of trying to pull rank or try to show how much more that you know. It should always be a learning and teachable moment, always. And as long as we do that, and as long as we kind of guide the new blood in and not scare the crap out of them, I think the future is good. I think the future. Did you say where is it going? And am I answering this like rather than how is it going? Oh no, how. So I also think that it's really important that a lot of these DJs now are having these live sets and things. You know, they're having them on Twitch and they're having them hosted on Facebook. It's really important because it's also teaching people who might suffer from things like, say, social anxiety, or they're worried about going out because they're afraid of encountering jerks, or they're nervous. They've never been out. So it's kind of them dipping their toes in, seeing a live DJ set, sometimes seeing people dancing, and then interacting with people in the comments And you're getting that kind of subdued version of it. And then the more you kind of experience that, the more likely they are to get out. Because I think that a lot of these things being implemented are really helping people step out of their shell, associate with people in the scene, and feel more comfortable and more confident going out and experiencing these things, going out to clubs, going out to shows, supporting these events, and also learning new music in the process. So that is how I think things are going. Continuing on. Sorry if you hear my dog snoring, by the way. Still house hunting. How's it going? Putting it off for a year. We renewed our lease because the market out there is utterly freaking ridiculous. $500,000 for a dilapidated house that is essentially termites holding hands. We're going to wait it out, see how it goes. Thinking about leaving the state. I will talk about that at some other point. But yeah, renewed the lease here. And I have a friend that's going to be moving out to New York from LA and is going to be living with me for a little while. And I think we're, you know, it should be a fun and positive experience. It's, we're going to be buying a house together because that is the way the world is going. We're going back to pack living. Inflation, the house market just being utterly ridiculous. It's kind of designed now to where people need to rely upon each other in order to freaking survive. So unless we want to buy a little ass condo and spend all of our money on it and be stuck in it for years, and mind you, the condos, a 1 or 2 bedroom in New York, you're going to spend about $400,000. I want a yard. I want a backyard. I want a basement that I could finish. I want space to do things, and you're not going to get that with a condo. So we are holding off for a year, and we're going to see where life takes us, and hopefully the market gets better next year. But as for this year, nope, defeated. How long, okay, Blair Graves wants to know, how long would you say that your awesome makeup process takes? The most time that I spend, honestly, is time on my skin, because I'm not particularly great at makeup. It's never been my strong suit. I am an esthetician, and part of our module is makeup. And because my focus has always been on skin, the anatomy, the function, and really repairing it and restoring it, they just kind of let me slide. And I've, you know, gotten by. It's easier for me to do makeup on myself than it is to do makeup on other people. I could never be a makeup artist because I'm right-handed, but for me to do makeup on someone else, it would be the equivalent of trying to write calligraphy with my left hand. I can't do it. So most of my work when I do makeup is completely reliant on skin, prepping the skin, and then everything else, that probably takes me a solid 20 minutes. And then with everything else, I would say my makeup takes about a half hour to do. About a half hour. Probably a little bit more because I always procrastinate. I end up getting distracted and doing other things. But if I wasn't distracted, it would just be like a half hour. Kenya Carter said, can you answer my question? And put pointy fingers up. But there is no question here. It just says, can you answer my question? I tried. I'm sorry. Cleo Moonchild wants to know, do you have any tattoos? I do not. And I have far too many commitment issues to get tattoos because I would get sick of it and then try to rip it off my body. Izora von Schwartz, also known as Green Light at Dusk on Instagram, wanted to know what bands that you've been listening to do you recommend? So some of the ones I'm listening to right now that I recommend is, of course, Hante, Hante. I hope that I'm pronouncing that properly. I want to see if there is a phonetic way to say this. Kaelan Mikla, they're Icelandic. They're really good. So it's Kaelanmikla. I'm queen mispronunciation, so I'm trying really hard not to mispronounce. Scary Black, also really good. Actors, Wingtips, Boot Blacks. Highly recommend checking out Rose Garden Funeral Party. And that is it off of the top of my head, but I will also share my Spotify and my Bandcamp as well for you. Always check my description. How do you take care of your skin? I'm dealing with my first wrinkles and I am lost. So oftentimes people get wrinkles and they don't realize that you're dehydrated, and so you want to do a test on yourself first. Find out what is the appropriate amount of fluid to drink in a day for your height and weight. Generally, they say 8-ounce glasses of water a day. Make sure that you're drinking that and follow that for about a week. Take a picture of yourself prior. Do it for about a week. They always say 4 to 6 weeks is best, but I say let's just do 2 weeks. Keep it safe. Do 2 weeks. 8-ounce glasses of water every single day, 2 solid weeks, and then take a picture of your skin after, and then tell me what your wrinkles look like, because that will tell me if they were superficial and they're due to dehydration, or if they have to actually do with anything more like, your basic fine lines that start to happen as you age a bit. Because if that is, I would recommend a good retinoid. And know your retinoids. So there are a lot of resources online to teach you about retinoids, because there are a lot of different retinoids that you can get that do absolutely nothing, because the FDA doesn't mandate the amount of retinols that can go into a product. Oh, and who said that to me? I'm a butthole. Tinka3 Zippy the Wicked asked, what are your 5 top Bauhaus songs? Obviously we got Dark Entries, Tara Couple Killed Colonel, Bela Lugosi's dead, come on, She's in Parties, and In the Flat Field. She also asked, what black lipstick do you use? I use Black Moon Cosmetics, and I like glossy black more than matte, but it smudges off every 2 minutes. Yeah, that's going to be the whole problem. Let me have a look at you, because if you like glossy lipstick, that means you have naturally full lips, because people with naturally full lips can get away. Yep, you do. This is why I ask. If you have naturally thinner lips and you overdraw, a dead giveaway is if you're using glossy lipstick, because you can see the borders and it looks ridiculous. So you have to use matte so it doesn't show through. However, people with naturally full lips, they can get away with gloss all day long. Natalie Lee wants to know, Roe versus Wade thoughts. What do you think? I'm a female with a uterus. Not trying to be mean, by the way. So Wonder Woman with X's in places of O's asked me, hi, I was wondering what advice you might have for a baby bat like myself on trying to be part of the subculture and meet other goths. Your videos have really helped me find a space that I wasn't even aware I was going to connect with myself again. It's freaking awesome. So if you're trying to be part of the subculture and meet other goths, honestly, I think online is a great tool because it's a nice, safe place. It's a safe place to start. So I would recommend going online and trying Facebook groups, local Facebook groups for goths in your kind of general vicinity and surrounding area. But be careful, because there are a lot of groups out there that are very TikTok driven. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people on TikTok that present goth as kind of a fashion movement, and they espouse the same in a lot of the Facebook groups. And if you mention music, they'll call you a gatekeeper, elitist, blah, blah, blah. And that's when you realize you're in the wrong group. So it might take a little bit of trial and error, but really have a look around and find it that way. And then once you find a local as you can get to your area, Facebook group regarding, your scene, integrate, talk to people. It's a lot easier to talk to people when you're behind a screen. It feels a lot more comfortable. You don't have to worry about being in someone's face, because sometimes that's nerve-wracking. That whole process is definitely unnerving. So it takes away a lot of that anxiety with like walking into a physical space, and it helps you integrate with people, talk to people, see what's going on, and then eventually kind of arrange a meetup, see what's going on, see where the shows are, see where the clubs are, and hopefully you'll feel comfortable enough to meet up and do these things in person. Mario Alonso Flores Delgado asked me, zodiac sign? I'm a Libra. Balaria02 asked, can you be a goth but not be into makeup? Goth is a music-based subculture, and that's really what it revolves around. Now, if that question was reversed, can you be into the makeup and not the music and still be goth? I would tell you a resounding no, because being a music-based subculture, that's where our roots lie. So there are so many different looks and styles within the goth subculture. There's too many to count. We all have our personal style and our interests, and just because you don't wear makeup, it doesn't make you any less of a goth. Goth has to do with the type of music that you listen to. If you listen to goth music, that's where you decide whether or not you want to be part of the subculture, because you have that choice. There are people who listen to goth music and they're like, I'm not a goth, not part of that, I just happen to like the music. Alternatively, you could say, yes, I listen to the music and I am part of the subculture. Really the only thing you need if you want to be part of the subculture, you just listen to the music. That's really it. Most underrated goth band in your opinion? Who asked me that, by the way? Nap Time asked me. The most underrated goth band in my opinion. Corpus Delicti. I think Corpus Delicti is probably one of those bands that are a little bit underrated and I think deserve a bit more attention, but I think it's good that they're coming back out and they're doing their thing and they're touring. La la la. I'm very excited about that. Jesse Cajurine wants to know, if you could choose a perfect meal, what would it consist of? Sushi. I'm so simple when it comes to a lot of things. I think sushi. However, being gluten-free, as long as I want bread so bad. I want real bread so bad, like a big crusty loaf of Italian bread, and just dip it in the sauce. And by the sauce, I mean like the big pot of Sunday sauce, the ragu that people make, like the grandmas make. And I used to do that every Sunday. Would get like the big loaf of Italian bread, and you'd have to get multiple because everybody was doing it, because the sauce cooks all day long, and you break off pieces of the bread and you dip it in the sauce as it's cooking, and it's like the best thing ever. I miss that. Dirty Pillows, aka Matrimonial Eye Candy, asked me, what is your relationship with religion? I don't really have any relationship with religion, any real relationship at the moment, considering what's going on in the world. Religion makes me angry because it's been the guiding principle behind a lot of things that have caused harm to others. So right now, I kind of don't have a great relationship with religion, but I'm not an inherently religious person. I'm spiritual, but I've never really been a religious person. Kevo, aka I took my other name already, asked, I'm sorry, I'm sort of new, but how can you ease your way into joining the subculture? Fuck easing. Explode into that room. Explode in like the Tasmanian devil, wearing maracas and a sombrero. Go and just go crazy. No, don't do that. So if you want to ease your way in and you don't want to, come off too crazy, you just want to like kind of dip your toes and just kind of like slowly ease your way in, start with the music. It's the best way to go. I can't tell if you listen to the music or not. Yeah, you don't have your Instagram is private, so I can't tell. That I would recommend, start with the music. But I'm assuming you mean kind of getting involved with other people. Find your local club night, see what's going on, and go with friends. If you're nervous, always, when in doubt, if you're nervous, always go with friends, because friends provide a great buffer. And going by yourself, I have never ever gone to a club or a show by myself. I could never do that. Even today, when I was younger, no way. And today, even doubly so. Taffy, otherwise known as Taffy DeLaunch, asked me, how does it feel when so many people look up to you? And have you ever been recognized in real life? Have a great day. I don't know if people really... Do people look up to me? Genuinely asking. Put it in the comments below. But I think it'd be really sweet if they did. As far as being recognized in person, I have. And every single time, I don't realize that people are recognizing me from my channel. I think that I know them in person, because they'll come up to me all excited and I'll be like, oh my God, where do I know them from? Think of names. And I can't think of anything. And then I realize, oh, they know me from my channel. I have one of those. But it catches me off guard every time. But when I'm recognized, it's when I go out to shows, clubs, or randomly Trader Joe's. oddly enough, I'm recognized a lot in Trader Joe's. Multiple Trader Joe's, which is kind of bizarre. I love that store, but it has not resulted in any discounts yet. Victoria, Soviet Sedation, wants to know, what was your favorite piece of clothing from your youth? I immediately remember this. Okay. So I had this kind of, I called it a corset, but it was not a corset. It came from Hot Topic. I got it in 1996, and it was a velvet and mesh bodice. The mesh was black, the velvet was this burgundy color, and it was square neck, laced up the front, zipped up the back, and it was kind of Renaissance in nature, and it made me feel like Lisa Hammer. Because More Syphilitica or Requiem in White was a well-known band. They were ethereal, sort of operatic, goth rock, a interesting mixture of things. And I often saw Lisa out and about in clubs, shows, things like that. And she, me being young and she being, I guess, one of the elders, and being so stunning and so talented, is somebody that I really looked up to. And having that whole kind of look and appearance, that it made me feel like one of the big kids and closer to being accepted. And it was one of the things that I wore to the London After Midnight show back in 1997. A lot of these are musically inclined. Oh no, here we go. Dark Disco, or Dark Donnie Disco on Instagram, said pancakes versus waffles. Waffles all the way. I love waffles. I will never turn down waffles. Jason Ledyard, do you ever miss living in England? I do. I do miss living in England sometimes. Every now and again, I will suddenly think of something or remember something and just the way things were, and I will miss living in England. But for the most part, I think I'm more tempered to live in the US. However, I do love England as well. I love Europe in general. Oh, it's not part of Europe anymore. That's right. That sucks. But yeah, I do miss living in England sometimes. Not having the AC on. Not fun. I will tell you, not fun. Taylor Slay wants to know, what is the best gateway genre to get someone into goth music? Also, I love your videos. It got me through quarantine. Thank you. Okay. So I would say the best gateway genre is probably going to be dark wave. There's something about synths that add a nice little bridge that will kind of bridge the gap between whatever they're listening now to goth music, because depending upon what they listen to, particularly if they listen to things that are a lot of like chart-based music. I know with my sister, I got her into a lot of the music by way of Drab Majesty, which she loves, London After Midnight, that kind of thing. Anything involving synths tend to really add a bit of a bridge that eases people over. Okay, Twitter. We're doing Twitter next. Oh wait, I think I have Twitter open here. Twitter. Okay, no, we're gonna do Facebook next. Cheyenne Marie, have you ever wanted to get tattoos? If so, what kind? No way, Jose. I have far too many commitment issues. Francesca Coriano, have you ever listened to Spanish goth music? Yes. Gothic Sex, Red Apple Cult, off the top of my head. Jesse Desmond, what suggestions do you have for people who have very little goth culture and events in their area? I recommend going online and finding things as close as humanly possible, because there are other goths in your village. You just don't see them yet. Chris Scarborough, in what way do you feel that goth culture can enhance the human condition? I think it opens your mind a lot more. People are a lot more open-minded in the goth scene, or we're a lot less likely to chastise or judge somebody for things as trivial as like mental illness, for example. Millie Molly Mandy, do you have a job? I do. Nancy Toms Brown, what do you think is the most appealing way to dress as an elder goth? What garments and items would you put together for them? Honestly, a lot of what I've been doing lately, and it's kind of become my thing now. I used to frequent thrift stores, and I would go straight to the lingerie section. And lingerie section, that's what I would use to repurpose and make my wardrobe. But nowadays, it has switched into beach cover-ups, and I'm obsessed with them, like caftans and flowy things, and that is what I've been basically living in. Let me see if I can show you. Caftan beach cover-up. I'm actually wearing pants under them. So for elders, I would recommend repurpose beach cover-ups, long, flowy caftans, that kind of thing. Become a high priestess. And I've been living in these things like crazy. Grim Rejoice. I've actually been wanting to get your perspective on a situation I found myself in recently. A 40-year-old self-proclaimed emo kid tried to school me on being goth and honestly said, goth is just an umbrella term and it's all emo now. Joy Division is one of the biggest emo bands ever, but goth is really just more of a fashion statement and has nothing to do with music. Yeah, I highly disagree with all of this, LOL, but I would love to get your response on the matter because anything I tried to say, including linking this person to your videos, just got a fingers in the ears, la la la. Nope, you're not wrong. There's no goth, only emo reaction. That is a moron that you're dealing with. I think that you are wasting your breath with this person. And the reason I say that is because it's not that they don't understand reason, it's that they don't want to. And they know. They know. They want to be part of a subculture that they know they have no place in because clearly they don't have any interest in the music. What did they do? They named one goth band that you can find t-shirts of in H&M and Forever 21, the most commercial stores that they possibly have in the mall. So they don't like goth. They want to be part of that subculture, but they know that they can't. So what are they going to do? They're going to liken it to something that they are part of and can be part of, and therefore consider themselves one with the flock. So there's nothing that you can say or do to this person. Just kind of pat them on the head and say, okay, sure. Preston Probst, do you think you will ever get Stuart on camera? That is going to be a hard no. Joey Swank, what would you tell teenage Angela? Leave your eyebrows alone. Do what you can. Go through the proper channels. Find health insurance and get mental help. You're going to have future issues due to the way that you were brought up because you'd seen some shit. So if you don't get help now, you are in for a rocky adulthood. Also, put the tweezers down. Reading on. Hi Angela, it is Michael Gavin Ali from YouTube. You had a turbulent childhood with your mom and your dad passed away. Did you make amends with your mom or do you not associate with her after your dad's passing away? So my dad passed away over 20 years ago. He passed away in 2000. And as far as my mother, I've made amends and I do associate with my mother. I speak to her, we exchange gifts, that kind of thing. But it is admittedly very difficult for me because of the way that I was brought up and because of the things that I was subject to, because there was a lot of substance abuse, verbal abuse, there was physical abuse, there was neglect, there was a lot of other things that I won't get into because I don't want to bring things down to that level, but there was so much that had gone on over 40 years of my life. That is like 99.9% of my life up until this point. And now I'm going to be 43. In the last 2 years or so, that's when she's kind of turned over a new leaf. And my sister is constantly trying to kind of ingratiate a sort of, I'm trying to think of a way to put it. She's trying to sort of say it's not like that anymore. She's not like that anymore, etc., etc. She's changed now. She's not like that. She feels a lot of guilt, which is fine and good, okay? And I understand that. I mean, we've all done things in our past that we regret. We all have. It would be silly to assume otherwise. However, being on the receiving end, having been a child and being brought up in that situation and going through my whole life, it was hard. It was really, really hard for the majority of my life. And then within the last 2 years, after all of that, after all the damage has been done, saying, hey, I'm better now, things are different, it's difficult for me to come to a place mentally where I can separate who she was between who she is, because I've only known her as one way my entire life. And it's very difficult for me now because I'm expected to have this relationship with her. And you're supposed to. It's your mother. Obviously, I mean, well, no, you're not supposed to. But in the grand scheme of things, and like through the course of time, it's something that you would regret in the future if you didn't. Should the worst and the worst will eventually come to pass. So it's just very difficult for me to separate the two. And you don't just let things go, particularly when you're in trauma therapy, kind of working through all of the things that you've been through and trying to heal from and undo a lot of bad behaviors that you have developed over the years and coping mechanisms by way of the shit that you've endured. So I'm gonna take it down from the negativity now. Thomas Jacob, what are your favorite music genres that are not goth related? Freestyle. I love freestyle. And shoegaze to me is goth adjacent, so I don't know if you would consider that like not, it is kind of goth related, so I don't know if we'll mention shoegaze. But I do love shoegaze. I would say freestyle. I love freestyle. Hey dear Angela, I would like to know what happened with the process of having a baby. What went wrong? Jesus Christ. What went wrong? Okay, still trying. Still trying to have a baby. Been trying for the last few years. A lot of it is chalked up to the fact that I started late in life, and I really should have started much earlier. But unfortunately, I didn't get into a comfortable and meaningful relationship with a person that I would feel comfortable enough to have a baby with until much later in life, and we needed to be established. We didn't want to bring a baby into a studio apartment while we were both working minimum wage jobs while going to school. So, but unfortunately, once we found ourselves in a place where we both had careers, we had health insurance, we had a bigger apartment, and we were working toward buying a house, suddenly, things degrade. Eggs go, it's not quite what happened with me, but I had something called an HSG test, and it is a really painful test where they shoot all of this liquid dye up into your fallopian tubes, and it goes into a space in like your uterine cavity where nothing is supposed to go. Therefore, when it gets there, it hurts bad. It was a painful test. They told me, you might spot a little, this is a little bit of TMI, you might spot a little bit, so bring a pad. I didn't spot, I full on bled, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. And as it turns out, my left fallopian tube is occluded at the distal portion. So there are 3 places where your fallopian tube can be occluded. So let's just call this the tube, right? Right at the beginning it could be occluded, in the middle, or at the end. So if it's occluded at the beginning or the middle, the good thing about that is the HSG test will flush that out. And a lot of people get pregnant after that, unless it's the distal portion, which is the end, which means the part where the egg is and the egg gets released is sealed off by scar tissue. Yeah. I do not have a left fallopian tube, just the right. People do get pregnant with one fallopian tube. It's just a bit harder. What other questions we got? So now, moving on to Twitter. Twitter questions. Diego Hernandez asked, if you had a band or music project, what style, goth rock, death rock, dark wave, would it be, and what band or artist would be your biggest influence? So I would say either goth rock or dark wave. And my biggest influences would be Switchblade Symphony, Clairvoyant, Frozen Autumn, Faith in the Muse, bands like that would definitely be my biggest influences. And I do have one project that I put out there into the universe. Are Depeche Mode goth? Also, do you think that non-goth bands can have goth songs and vice versa? Depeche Mode are not goth, they are synthpop. However, you would be hard-pressed not to hear a Depeche Mode song at a goth night. Let's look at The Cure and Susie and the Banshees, right? So The Cure and Susie and the Banshees both have pop albums, but they also have albums that are unmistakably goth. As far as non-goth bands having goth songs, accidentally, check out an Iggy Pop song called Cry for Love. And I want to know what you think. If you got this far in the video, tell me in the comments what you think. I'm very, very curious. Iggy Pop, Cry for Love. Is it goth rock? Is it not? How did you DIY the shirt? That's so cute, and I love the podcast. Who asked me that? Vegan Tot. Okay. So the picture that I used that Vegan Tot is referring to is from my latest video. And it is a DIY that I posted, and it was a oversized t-shirt that I got from Cemetery Confessions, and I did a DIY teaching you how you can turn this t-shirt into a bodycon dress. And I shredded the top, shredded the sleeves. It's a very cool DIY. I spend a lot of time on my DIYs, so much time on my DIYs. And even though I spent 3 days on that DIY, I got very little to no views, and it is comments like this that make me realize why. So in answer to you, Vegan Tot, I will let you know that shirt has a video attached to it. And I highly recommend subscribing to my channel. I do have DIYs. If you want me to do more DIYs, if you like them, watch them. Don't just request them and then not watch them at all, because what ends up happening is I spend all this time working on them and they're such a pain in the ass. So Sinister Hand wants to know, how long did you practice DIY before that you felt you were competent at it? I still don't. There are times where I still don't feel that I'm competent because there's so many things that I still can't do. But I think once I learned how to use a sewing machine, that's when everything was completely amped up. Valeria Absinthe wants to know, what should a goth or baby bat or otherwise look for to determine what bands are and aren't actual goth bands? So what I would recommend is going to the goth subreddit, places like that, and say, hey, I'm new to the scene. I'm just trying to figure out what the goth sound is. There's so much dilution out there with what is and isn't goth. It makes the waters very muddied with regards to what goth is. And all I want to know is, am I on the right track? Is this goth? And then what you'll probably end up with is obviously your yes or no of whether or not it's goth, but suggestions. People love giving band suggestions, which is so much more than we got back in the day because people guarded that shit. So try the goth subreddit, I would recommend. Jessie, otherwise known as Lefu with 2 U's on Twitter, asked, I'm going to ask another question. Did you ask one already? I'm going to ask another question. In the 90s, when you were first in the goth scene, was the scene more racially diverse? So things might be a little bit different for me because I'm in New York and we're in a cultural melting pot. So when I first got involved in the goth scene, there were Italians, there were Hispanic, there was Asian, there was Jewish, there was Muslim, there was Black. You had every shade under the rainbow and every culture, every religion. But I will say that with accessibility and with goth being brought into people's homes and in people's back pockets, more people are finding out about goth now. And it's bringing it to people that otherwise may not have seen it. Say people from the Midwest, say people from way down south that may not have been exposed to goth and are now. And that includes people from other ethnic groups, which I think is freaking fantastic because the more, the merrier people. Drabmeister asked, your fashion on YouTube and Twitter is always so well put together and on brand with you, but I'm curious, do you ever like to wear non-goth or colorful normie clothes? No, I don't even own any. Closest thing I probably have are sweatpants because I love cozy clothes. And it's kind of stuff that I would wear to bed or jog in, and even then they're black. So, oh no, I have a pair of gray. But I also have, I have other color clothes, but they're not normie clothes, if that makes sense. Like this dress that I'm wearing, I have it in white. You've seen it. Deep Poetic Society, how do you patiently deal with individuals who claim to be goth, yet clearly don't understand the traditions of the culture and replace it with social media shenanigans? Ugh, the struggle is very real. How do I as you can tell, I don't deal with them very well. I'm sure there's probably a better way to deal with them, but it's very difficult for me because they piss me off so much. And I am a person that is so deeply affected by stress, that it's something that I actively try to avoid. But that being said, The way that I try to deal with them is by way of education. But the problem with that is oftentimes these people don't want to hear it. They already have an idea in their mind. And the way that I try to deal with it is by way of education. But the problem is these people already have an idea in their head, and they know that they're not goth. They know the difference, but they refuse to hear it. They don't want to be part of the subculture. They want the label. The label is what's important to them. And they want that label so badly, you do this until you're blue in the face. They don't want to hear you. Sorry, my dog is snoring. And eventually, they're going to get bored. And that's something that I tend to continually kind of tell myself, is that they're going to get bored. Because to them, it's not the same thing that it is to you and I. The subculture is something very deep and personal and meaningful. It's something that we have been involved with for so long, and they don't have that same connection. To them, it's just a fad. So whereas we'll still be here, we'll always be here, they'll eventually move on. Dark Raver said, okay, so you have a couple of questions, but I want to try to get to everything, so I'm gonna see which. Oh my god, you have like a bunch. One, opinion on the modern scene. What about alt TikTok? So there are some good TikTokers out there that are actually genuinely part of the scene and really do impart things that I feel are important. Values, music, things like that. But then you have kind of this rise of the fashion goth. Fashion goths have always been there, but these people are really creating a culture that is becoming a problem because they're kind of infiltrating other places, and they're treating it as if they're kind of like the mean girls of the goth world on TikTok, but they're not really goth. So what they're doing is they're acting as like goth border patrol in their expensive head-to-toe kitted out outfits. And here you have, say, a young goth girl A and young goth boy B who genuinely are into the music. They're brand new, they're baby bats, but they don't have access to the clothing or the fashion or anything that they do, whether it be financially or where they're located, so they don't look the same. So these fashion goths on TikTok, they laugh at them, they push them out, and they make them feel inferior, and they make them feel self-conscious. And what that ends up doing is it pushes them away, it pushes them out of the scene, which is not fair. And I've seen it by reading the comments of these TikTok videos, and believe me, it's definitely given me the kick in the ass I need to start my TikTok up. Cheryl Nightshade, what would you say to those that want to wear more revealing outfits to clubs or shows but are afraid? I know it's a case-by-case thing, but in my experience, people in the scene couldn't care less what you wear, but be it a latex thong or a chicken costume. Sorry if this came off weird. Nothing comes off weird to me nowadays anymore. Wear something revealing, but layer things over it, and as the night progresses and you get a little bit more comfortable, one by one, take a layer off, and before you know it, you'll be wearing the revealing outfit that you want. But if you're not comfortable, you're still in your layers. No harm, no foul. Zachnifying Achnite. Even back when YouTube was in its prime, too many stories were told regarding negative public reactions from non-goth strangers. My question is, what stands out to you as the most positive experience? So my husband and I recently went to an oddities market. It was a nighttime oddities market that we go to, and it was midsummer. It was, let me see, it was just under a month ago. And while we were there, I actually vlogged the event, which I'm going to be uploading soon. But while we were there, a lot of people just had come up to us, and I thought he knew them, he thought I knew them, but they were just people that were coming up and complimenting us on the way that we looked, and just wanted to talk to us just based on what we looked like. That was really it. But that to me was a positive experience, was that they were looking at us and not looking at us like we were circus freaks or anything like that. They were genuinely interested, and they liked the way that we looked, and they wanted to know more about us as people, and not, will you drink our blood? Which is something I got so much in the 90s. Ida, hey Angela, I remember you mentioning that you've always been musically inclined. Do you play instruments, or which instrument would you like to learn, and are you ever going to learn any instruments? So I kind of dabble in a little bit of everything. I sing, I play the keyboard, I can play pretty much anything by ear. If I hear it, I can play it on a keyboard or piano. Guitar, I do know a little bit of. I took guitar lessons when I was younger, and it's something that I would like to get back into, actually. I really would like to get back into guitar. I can write music via MIDI devices like Fruity Loops, Cakewalk, Cubase, that kind of thing. And I'd like to start writing more. Rachel, your hair is absolutely gorgeous. Thank you very much. I would love to know if you have any advice to give anyone with alopecia. What hair care could they use that would encourage hair growth? I would recommend peppermint oil mixed with a carrier oil like jojoba oil. So do a little bit of research, Google it, and just to make sure that, so you know that I'm not blowing smoke. There has been positive results with using peppermint oil as well as jojoba oil. And I think mixing that while using Ketoconazole shampoo once every month or so also helps. But I would look into the Ketoconazole, maybe stray from that because it can be very drying. And if you have alopecia, I don't want your hair becoming so coarse that it breaks. So we want to minimize breakage. So I would start with the peppermint oil and the jojoba oil mixed. But there are a lot of resources online that will tell you the proper way to go about that. Nicole Irene, hey Angela, I remember a while back you mentioned that you had a bit of health issues like PCOS and hypothyroidism. How are you doing with your health, and how do you take care of your long hair during the summer? I feel like chopping mine off. Okay. So I don't have PCOS. I have an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's, which my thyroid is basically under attack by my immune system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I have to do lots and lots of things to mitigate that from happening. Which is pretty much impossible, so the only thing I can do is minimize. Do not have PCOS, thank goodness. I thought I did, but I do have uterine fibroids, but they're teeny, teeny, tiny, like pebbles, fortunately. But we keep an eye on them, make sure that they don't get bigger. Oh, as far as my hair. So in the summertime, obviously, which it is right now, it's very hot. A lot of the time, rather than wear my hair down if it's super hot, what I'll do is I'll put it in braids. So I'll put it in pigtail braids, which is, it's my protective style as well when I go to bed. I also have a sleeping cap that I wear, a satin one, because I can't tell you how many times I've woken up and my husband's asleep on my hair and pulling my neck back, or it's wrapped around my face. But I will just do pigtail braids, and that's really it. It keeps the hair out of the face and somewhat in check. Karina G, at what age did you feel that you were truly coming into yourself? So I told a story about this, and it is when I no longer felt as if I were a baby bat. It's kind of one of my favorite stories. I went to go see London After Midnight in 1997 at the Angel Orson Sands Foundation in New York City. And it was one time I really felt that I really liked the way that I looked. I looked like one of the big kids now. You know, I had that corset that I talked about earlier. And I had this long velvet opera coat that my mother got at the thrift store. She never ever wore, and I just wore all the time. So this long velvet opera coat with a hood. It was really super warm. And I remember at the end, sorry, my dog is just consistently snoring like a piglet. So after the show had ended, we were going to all go to the after party, which was a few blocks away. It was at a club called The Bank. Since it was so close, everyone decided to walk. At the end of the show, a lot of people, turns out, were actually going to the show as well, and we all ended up walking as a group together. And as I got back outside, this was February, it was February 16th, it snowed. And if you live in an area where it snows a lot, you know how it becomes really, really quiet. There's this silence, but it's a peaceful and pleasant silence associated with the snow, and it just absorbs all the sound. And in the middle of Manhattan, that's a big deal when you have that silence. So we're exiting this venue, which happens to be an old cathedral. So we're walking out of this old cathedral, huge group of goths, must be like 100 of us together, walking to the venue through the snow. I'm in this long velvet opera coat. People are singing songs from the night. They're laughing. We're all talking, and I felt like I was part of something. That was the first time I didn't feel like, you know, the kid at the kids' table. I actually felt like one of the flock for once. And that was the moment that I truly felt that I had really come into myself. And it was a great feeling, just walking through the snow that night. And I felt like a big kid. It was great. Your name is No. So No wants to know, what advice do you give to a young goth desperately wanting to become involved in their local scene, but they can't due to the regular clubs being 18 plus? there's got to be one set of parents that are going to be more than happy to host you and have you in their house as opposed to God knows where out on the streets. So move the furniture out of the way, get a playlist together, dress up like you're going out, invite all your friends, and do a mock-up club. And that's the house parties are the best. They're so much fun. Gabriella Corleone wants to know, I love your makeup looks, and what are your favorite cosmetic brands? I like Revolution. I like e.l.f. I like MAC. Misha. I like Black Moon Cosmetics. Those are the only things I can think off the top of my head. Angel X0134. How do you think that, if at all, our generation, I'm 23, could find ways to come together the way that people did in the 80s or 90s? To clarify, how can we lose the social anxiety of going out in public and socializing physically as opposed to being on a screen everywhere? I only had the early 2000s for an experience without technology encompassing everything. Man, do I miss the feeling of true intimacy and soul bonding. I know where you're coming from. Believe me. It was so real, it was raw and sporadic, and I literally I don't know how to go about meeting people in public nowadays, since going up to somebody randomly isn't as easily accepted and non-awkward as it once used to be. I want physical friends. The best thing we can do is do what shows like Stranger Things are doing. Do you notice that suddenly there are more arcades popping up, and there are roller skating rinks, and there are 80s themed events, all because of Stranger Things? And there's a resurgence of a lot of things from the 80s because of that. And because people today are so heavily influenced by media that these things are coming back into fruition as a result of what they're seeing and what they're doing. There are ways that you can reintroduce these things. For example, I'm sure you remember a show on MTV called The Real World. Did you know that it used to not be a complete shit show train wreck? It used to have dynamic characters that all stood for something and fought for what they believed in and believed in communication, and they all had dreams and aspirations. So I would recommend watching I would recommend watching 1 through, I believe, 6, and 6 I think was London, because those episodes are the ones you're going to be introduced to characters. I mean, you just have such a gamut of really interesting and creative people, but from different walks of life, all coming together, and they're getting along. They're learning about each other's differences, but they're embracing them. And they're not getting wasted and just like screwing each other and then throwing up and fighting. There's one episode of The Real World, San Francisco, where a lot of them were clashing a bit. But when I say clashing, they weren't fighting. They were just having trouble communicating, I think. So one of them decided, hey, let's all write a poem about ourselves or something that means something to us. And we're all going to sit in a circle and we're going to read that poem. And nowadays, people would laugh at a concept like that. But they did it, and they all came out of it with so much more clarity about themselves and the other person. And it was a way that people communicated back then, I think, is so lost on people. And I think the way media consumes things, I think if this sort of thing were to be brought back into the mainstream, you know, people are so interested now in things from the past. Bring back the older episodes of The Real World. Let them see how people interacted with one another, how people behaved, how they saw the world, and how they impacted it. And maybe they'll want to do the same, because that's really what society is now. It's kind of monkey see, monkey do. You know, someone's planking online, they want to go plank. Instead of eating Tide Pods, let's teach people to use their thoughts, use their intellect, use their letter writing techniques, and try to change people's perspective if they're having hurtful or problematic views. I don't know. Little Baby Bat wants to know, how do you deal with the hot weather and avoiding the sun when outside? I don't avoid the sun when I'm outside. I go outside. I will enjoy the weather, but I will wear lots of sunscreen. two types of sunscreen. You got sunscreen for the face and sunscreen for the body, but it's always at least SPF 50. So I have a facial sunscreen that is made by, I think this one is either CeraVe or La Roche-Posay, but it's an SPF 50. Indigo, how do we combat the objectification of goth women from people outside the subculture? I'm so tired of the tasteless, sexist goth girlfriend memes. The only thing I can think to do to combat it is to just call it out when we see it, because we can't stop the guys from objectifying goth girls, because they're just going to continuously, if they want to continuously make content that objectifies us, they're going to do it. And alternatively, if there are going to be girls out there, they're going to help perpetuate that stereotype by way of like hashtagging themselves as goth slut, goth whore, and posting pictures of themselves, you know, doing like super lewd things. It's not going to end, because sometimes guys outside the subculture, they don't know the difference. They look at this and think, well, all goths must be like this. So I don't know. Judy Doom, what are your favorite staple jewelry pieces? This is one of my favorites right here. Oh. Ultimate Weapon 2000. What qualities do you feel that goths have that normal people don't have? Less likely to judge? What is your experience? So like you said, they're less likely to judge. I think that we're more open-minded when it comes to a lot of things, because when you wear your personality on your sleeve like this, and you know, we're just so emotional in general by way of being so conditioned by the music that we listen to and the way that we interact with one another. We're naturally more open-minded, and we don't shy away from difficult conversations. Particularly, we're not going to shy away from conversations involving stigmas when, according to society, we ourselves are a stigma. So we're not going to shy away from discussions about things like mental health, which is why a lot of people assume on the outside that goth is synonymous with mental instability or, you know, mental issues, because we talk about it so openly. We're not afraid to discuss it. We're not afraid to be open about these things, whereas other people, it takes them a lot of drinks, a lot of hits off a bong to be able to be so open and free with themselves, whereas all we have to do is wake up in the morning and it's very easy for us. Callie, what colors do you gravitate toward when you do your makeup, and what is your number one anti-aging secret tip? So colors I gravitate toward, eyeshadow, I love orange. My eye color has like orange and red in it, so when I put on an orange eyeshadow, it flatters me a lot more. And when it comes to my number one anti-aging secret tip, sunscreen and stay hydrated. Carolina Ka, what movies do you recommend with a hint of a goth aura? How about less of a hint and more of a punch? Gypsy83. I write bad usernames, not tragedies, wants to know. I'm not really goth, more alt, but I'm going into the 7th grade this year, and what is the start of middle school for me, and I'm really scared of getting made fun of. Do you have any advice? Honestly, I think people now have a little bit more of an open mind when it comes to things such as fashion, especially considering that so many people tend to base their identity off of fashion. So I think if you kind of start light, be a little bit more subdued about it, and then gradually kind of add more things to your look, I think it's a lot easier for people to handle, as opposed to just going whole hog. But it really depends. You know, do you have other alt people in your school? And it really depends on all that. Denny's, which person or persons were you looking up to as a baby bat, and has it changed in times till now? Not really. I looked up to people like Monica Richards, who's an incredible vocalist, incredible writer, musician, and just always aesthetically what I wanted to be. I thought she was just like such a, you know, a beacon of just ethereal beauty and just like grace. I liked musicians like Porl King from Rosetta Stone, because if you ever listen to a Rosetta Stone song, he's a really amazing lyricist. The thing, Arcshot, I search it up, you're 42, but like someone said, you were 25, I wouldn't question it. I might even question if you were younger. So question, how much is good light, makeup, healthy lifestyle, and skincare? I'm 18 and would like to know. Wear sunscreen now. start wearing sunscreen, pound that sunscreen on your face, find a safe and healthy sunscreen, but it has to be a facial sunscreen because face sunscreen and body sunscreen are different. Some of it is actually lighting, I will say. And it's not because I'm very good at lighting. It's actually because I'm very bad at lighting. I don't know how to light myself to where I'm not completely blown out. So I try to sit as far away from my lights as humanly possible so I can look as normal as humanly possible. But I've taken care of myself very well for many, many years. I started my skincare journey when I was 14 years old. And even back when I was younger, I knew to put oatmeal on my face, and I knew to take vitamin E caplets for my skin, or capsules. So, even when I was younger, I was doing a lot to maintain my skin, and it does pay off in the end. So at 18, I would start now. Karen Loudenbeck, do goths like shoegaze? Yeah, a lot of them do. It's a goth adjacent. To me, it's a very goth adjacent genre, and I noticed that a lot of goths that I knew back in the day, at least, were very much into shoegaze, and goths that I know now, particularly one of my very best friends, she loves shoegaze. Denise Freeman, really dying to know how your fertility journey is going. Not great. We had one miss. I was pregnant for a little bit, and it didn't last very long. It passed. Lilith Binney, what is a DIY from the 90s that you still see or wish you see today? Get those slips from the thrift store and layer them up. Layered slips, embellished and DIY'd, they look so good. I miss that look. I love that look. Adrian Real, do you think that someone can be goth without wearing the corresponding attire? I look nothing like I used to, but I'm still attached to the culture and resonate with goth types. Any goth would assume that I'm a well-dressed normie that likes black. Normies question my summer attire and quiver as soon as I speak. It's fucking confusing. Honestly, when it comes to being involved in the subculture, as long as you're listening to the music, that's all that really matters. What you're wearing, sure, I mean, it makes a difference, but it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you're a goth. It just has to do with whether or not another goth will recognize you in the street as one of their own. You okay there, man? Honestly, your attire has absolutely nothing to do with where you stand within the subculture. It really has to do with whether or not you listen to the music, and that's always the way that it's been. And ask anyone, I'm sure that anyone involved in the subculture, and they'll agree. PR wants to know, what are your favorite scents, and do you have a favorite perfume? I wear patchouli oil. Love patchouli oil. I have a problem with scents where they trigger headaches for me. So I can't even walk into a Bath and Body Works without getting a splitting headache. So when it comes to things like perfumes, I stay away. The scents have to be very, very earthy, like woody scents. Patchouli, I like, I can handle things like lemongrass, lavender. I can handle things like that, but it has to be pure lavender. Tea tree oil, rosemary oil, sandalwood, leather, smoke, tobacco flower, that kind of thing. Madame Scodioli is someone that I follow on Etsy who really makes great scents. Her one scent that I seem to really like is called Illyria, and it's a perfume balm, and its main sort of dominating scent, it's a mix, is bergamot, so it smells like Earl Grey tea. It's a really good one. Everything Will Be Me. Could you recommend a bunch of goth rock and metal bands? I don't listen to metal. I hate metal. I've tried. I don't like metal. I can't get into it. I don't listen to metal. As far as goth rock, check my playlists. I have a whole playlist completely devoted to goth rock. Taya, how do you get into the scene as a minor? Most goth bands or clubs, unfortunately you don't. You gotta wait till you're 18. Otto the Doll too said, any advice on dealing with newbie anxiety? If you're going out, you're going to a night, always go with friends. Friends provide a great buffer, and it's a lot easier to kind of be in that environment, but have the safety and security of your friends around you, and then converse with them. I think you'll find things a lot easier that way. So I would say trust in your friends, and they'll be your saving grace in those situations. Aaron Huber, please do an updated version of your skincare and the products that you use. I actually did. about 2 months ago, I posted a updated skincare. I think people aren't getting updates to my videos, but I did an updated skincare routine that's about 2 months old, and it's all different products. MYNU, any goth makeup tips and how to keep the skin pale? Honestly, when it comes to makeup, keep your canvas clean, as in your skin. Make sure that you have a nice clean canvas to work with. Like if you're putting on foundation, exfoliate, because nothing looks worse on skin than foundation on dry skin that's just crusted over. I'm embellishing a little bit, but the skin turnover rate is around 28 to 40 days depending upon your age. So around, as you get like further into the 28 days, what's going to end up happening is your skin's going to look a little bit ashy, it's going to look a little bit dry, and your makeup's not going to stick to it right. You're going to put on foundation and it's not going to look smooth. So when you're doing your makeup, you want a clean canvas to work with. So give your face a good wash and exfoliation, and then moisturize it, and then put your foundation over that, and watch how much better your foundation looks after you exfoliate. Now, as far as keeping the skin pale, if you have pale skin to start with, just wear sunscreen. Make sure you're wearing sunscreen and that's it. But as far as making your skin pale, there's really no way to do that safely. And the only thing I can recommend is how to brighten your skin, and that's using products with vitamin C and licorice root. Brighten, but not lighten. Cup holder wants to know, do you have a favorite year of the culture? 90s. Costa. How, if in any way, have your views on life altered? Any good insights? A few years back, I did a video called When the Sparks Died, and it was detailing an abusive relationship that I was involved in. And in that video, I give myself partial blame for the damage that was caused. But here's the thing. I don't blame myself anymore. Not one fraction of a bit. I 100% place blame for everything that happened to me on my ex. He was the one doling out the abuse, not me. I blamed myself because I stayed. However, through trauma therapy, over a year of it, I've come to understand that one of the guiding emotions in those who suffer from trauma are guilt and self-blame. I would have never gotten into that relationship in the first place had I been presented with the facts and the truth. I was presented with lies. I was served on a platter all of the things that I wanted in a relationship, but I was lied to. And that's why I got involved. I got involved under false pretenses. That's in no way my fault. That's on him. All the things that had happened to me, the reason that I stayed, I blamed myself for staying. However, I suffered from systematic abuse that happened in such small increments to break me down in ways over time, to where by the time I realized what was going on, it was too late. To where I 100% do not blame myself anymore. I blame him. So that has changed. That is what has changed in my life, in my mind, my whole worldview. And if there's anything I can say for trauma therapy at this point, is it has completely changed my view on that entire situation. And I don't blame myself anymore. I'm bad. That too will be an emotion that I will get over, because anger is a negative emotion to have, and I don't want to have it anymore. I want to kind of release it, but kind of digressing a little bit. But so a lot of the rest of the questions that I'm getting are involving my hair and my hair care routine. So I'm just going to drop all the products that I use in the description of the video. With me, I know you're probably expecting this big elaborate sort of routine, step by step, but it's really not. And I feel really bad. I'll tell you the hair dye that I use and the hair care products. As far as my ethnic background, I am Southern Italian, Filipino, and like Sicilian. So Southern Italian, Sicilian, and Filipino. And my hair tends to be that of both. The strands are very thick, and my hair can be very, very coarse. So it does what it wants to do, particularly when there's humidity involved. So a lot of my hair care has to do with weighing it down a lot. So I use a lot of coconut oil, not coconut oil itself, but coconut oil products. And like I said, I'm going to link it in the description below. And I also use Ketoconazole Shampoo once every month or so, because I do have seborrhea dermatitis, which has to do with my Hashimoto's. I get a really friggin' dry ass scalp. Not a dry ass. I get a dry scalp. I use cocoa butter on my ass. All right, so I'm going to call it here. So if you have any suggestions with what you want to see on my channel, by all means, let me know, and I will look into your ideas. I'm currently getting more equipment. I'm investing in a better camera, and that should be fun, which is actually going to be a phone. What's crazy is a lot of my favorite YouTubers that I watch, with their quality is just incredible, incredible clarity. Do you know they record that on their phone? Let me show you my camera that I use for vlogging, and you're probably gonna laugh at me. When I vlog or when I shoot anything outside, this is what I use. That's it. So I thought, hey, this is a really great vlogging camera, and I'm looking at other people, and their quality is just amazingly clear and beautiful and like detailed. And it turns out they're using a friggin' phone. This has one job, and its job is to camera. Their phones, on the other hand, have several jobs, and they do all of them. So I'm going to be saving my pennies, and I'm going to be investing in a Samsung, not to use as a phone, but to just film entirely. My husband's Samsung, some of my greatest vlog footage, if you look at my vlog footage from last year's Halloween, where I did 2 festivals. I did the Oddities Market, and I also did Blaze Pumpkin Festival. That was on his phone, and it looks beautiful. This does not shoot at night, so that's my new news, and that's it. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.